Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with jazz multi-instrumentalist and composer Tyshawn Sorey. He opened up about his latest 2018 CD called Pillars. So this Newark-born artist is a big name in the world of jazz for his virtuosity, mastery, and memorization of highly complex scores, and an ability to blend composition and improvisation. He's been around America and the world with the best in jazz and has 8 critically acclaimed recordings. And since the fall of 2017, along with the recording, he has held the role of Assistant Professor of Composition and Creative Music at Wesleyan University. He's got stories, insights, and great tales, so please dig it.
Okay, Tyshawn, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Your latest CD, 2018's Pillars. Talk to me a little bit about your artistic vision for this project.
It started several years before that, actually. So I think it was probably around 2010 or so, where I put together this volume of music or whatever. It would have been called Quan 2, and it would have been a follow-up to my second recording release of the same name, but, just kind of the second edition of it. But then what happened was, I didn't really have the funds or a label to kind of do it with, so then I just kind of shelved it. But this was originally a project with guitar, 2 basses, trombone, and myself and everything. So that was the original part of the project. And actually, Todd Neufeld and Ben Gerstein were both on that original project that I did at Roulette some years ago as part of a residency. So that was in 2010. And then later on, a grant opportunity from the Shifting Foundation came, and I decided that I'd like to do that again, but I also thought of the idea of expanding the instrumentation and include 2 more bass players as part of the setup, plus another high brass player as part of it. And so that's how that happened. The orchestration got, actually the size of the group got larger, but then at the same time I also wrote some different music also because of the instrumentation, and I had more ideas, I think, that were probably more mature ideas or whatever than what I had in 2010, so that I decided, this will be the time to document something like that, especially, with the resources that I had from the Shifting Foundation and all of that stuff, and them supporting the project and all that stuff. It was possible for me to just do it. And so we did a concert of the entire piece. We played the piece kind of in a shorter version, but we played the piece in Hartford, Connecticut, one day before we went into the studio, and then we were in the studio for the 2 days after that. And that's kind of how that went.
So you're out of Newark. I want to know, what was your childhood like? How did you get involved with jazz?
Well, just mostly from listening to the radio and that kind of thing, and understanding that I didn't have to listen to things that, people in my youth kind of told me that I needed to listen to or something like that, or bought into any kind of social pressure on what to listen to. So I just basically listened to whatever I wanted to. I basically recorded cassette tapes of the music when I would hear it on stations like WKCR-FM or WBGO, which is another radio station that plays jazz, although they're mostly more on the traditional side of things than KCR was. But yeah, it was mostly through recording and making these cassette tapes of the music and listening to it, all day, every day, and, as well as a lot of other music. So that's kind of how that happened.
What musicians or albums early on really influenced you?
Well, it's hard to say. There were so many. I guess I recall getting some early Duke Ellington recordings or whatever. A lot of those were very inspirational for me, particularly during his OK period. Also the music of Charlie Parker, the music of Thelonious Monk, a lot of different things or whatever. Like, my uncle collected some records and everything, and sometimes I would go through his record collection and then listen to some stuff that he would get. Some of the more traditional stuff or whatever would be the things that I'd check out and stuff. So that was kind of more my background. Yeah, basically listening to a lot of classic recordings and stuff like that. And also the music of John Coltrane later became a huge influence for me, just in terms of what I wanted to do, in music and what I wanted to pursue in music and that kind of thing. And then later on, I've checked out a lot of the music of Ornette Coleman and the AACM and people like that, and got heavy into late period Coltrane and that kind of stuff, and just kind of just kind of checked out as much as I could, but these are some of the earliest examples of recording. Oh, also Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. That was a very big thing for me. That's been on heavy rotation pretty much since I was in my, early teenage years. So that's kind of been a thing that I've always listened to. And also Miles Davis as well, who was another huge influence for me, especially conceptually, just from a conceptual point of view and also from a band leading point of view in the way that, his groups was able to generate real-time improvisation, but in a way that was very different from any other way that I've heard any other group do it. And so he was also a huge influence for me. So these were a lot of the people who I've checked out or whatever in my early years and still check out today, even now, when I still listen to some stuff.
And as your career has gone on, you've been all over the nation, international. We're only as good as the heroes that we stand on top of their shoulders. And you've played with lots of great ones, like Wadada Leo Smith, Steve Lehman, Evan Parker. What have you learned from these cats that have had all these years behind them?
That you can never be too old or you can never be too advanced in your career to stop learning, and that, there's never been a period to learn more about music and to learn more about what one can do in music and how one can gain so much inner fulfillment through music. There's no better time to do that than now, when we have so much access to all of this information, and when you have the opportunity as a younger musician to be around, such creative forces who have been doing this for many years and who have had to, fight for their work and who have had to fight for self-definition and to fight for their ideas of creativity and that kind of thing or whatever. When you're around people like that, I mean, the tendency is to, want to become those people. And so I feel like, being around Evan Parker and Roscoe Mitchell and Richard Abrams and all of those people, I mean, it just made me want to become, those people, and it inspires me to, get to the standard that they've set for, what one can do in music. So I'm very grateful to all of those musicians for that.
After his critically acclaimed albums and all the roads that you've seen in jazz up to this point, are you happy with your career?
I mean, the question is, am I happy with my career? Well, it's ended up where it's ended up, where I'm more of a composer than a performer, and I'm perfectly fine with that, because that's kind of the direction that I've been going anyway in terms of what I'm doing in my own music, although I'll be recording a sextet recording in a couple of weeks of my own music and stuff like that, which is definitely more jazz than anything I've put out. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. But, I'm very happy right now where things are, just in terms of me being able to really focus deeply on my own work and spend a lot of time focused on that and writing music. And also, as an educator, it's been very good for me. I've had the chance to meet, nearly 400 or 500 young musicians over the last, maybe 7 or 8 years at the Banff Center, where I would work with, students there and kind of cultivate working relationships with some of the students there, and to be able to also teach them and that kind of thing. So, I'm very, I feel like I'm very fortunate right now, and it's a fortuitous period for me in terms of what I'm doing musically. And so I hope that that'll never end.
What's one of the first live jazz shows you saw that really, really moved you?
A show with Dizzy Gillespie at Newark Symphony Hall. I was maybe about 7 years old, or 7 or 8 years old, and I actually went and met him there. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I don't remember quite what he said to me, but he was very encouraging, and and I was, of course, the only young audience member there. You know what I mean? In fact, I don't think that kids were really allowed to go to this concert, because it was a late night concert, and he was there. I guess he had been there for an engagement or something like that in Newark Symphony Hall. But I went anyway, and my father took me there, and I remember meeting him in the back, and he would let me mess with his mutes and stuff like that, and I would ask him just really benign questions. What is that thing that you put inside the trumpet, that kind of stuff. And so that was definitely, one of the first, or if not probably the first memorable performative live jazz music that I've heard, in my city. And another one was when I went to the JVC Jazz Festival. I was maybe about 14 or 15 years old, and a friend of mine took me there. And at that concert, I saw James Williams, Intensive Care Unit. I saw the Elvin Jones Jazz Machine there, and I saw another group, Baron Down, with Joey Barron, Josh Roseman, and Ellery Eskelin, who were playing there at that time. And I hadn't even heard of, those other groups. The only group that I knew was the Elvin Jones Jazz Machine. I believe Roy Haynes also played that night too. I mean, it was just an incredible evening of music, and it was right outside in Bryant Park. I remember going to that in New York. It was an amazing performance, and those concerts to me were like, it didn't, I didn't really necessarily think of doing it as a life's work, just in terms of, making some kind of career out of it, but it was something that I very much enjoyed doing, and it's something that I always wanted to get better at, every time I would do it. And so I would see all of these musicians playing all the time, where I would go to jam sessions and go to things like that festival and go to other things out in New York. Even though I was underage, I would still go and check out things, and that's what kind of drove me to, want to become a musician, to make some kind of living, hopefully, doing the music I wanted to do. And so those were fortuitous periods for me.
Why do you love this creation known as jazz? What is it about this music that moves you?
The way the music makes me feel, I guess. I can't really put it into words because it's an abstract thing, but definitely it's something that I've grown up with, and it's something that I feel a very close relationship to the idea of making art, and not necessarily making art for the sake of entertainment and everything. I've never really looked at a lot of the musicians who I respect, or a lot of the artists whose work I paid a lot of attention to. I don't think they've considered themselves necessarily, entertainers, people who are just kind of trying to make music to earn some kind of money or something like that. Of course, you want to earn money from doing this, but at the same time, the amount of craft that, all of these artists have put into the work is so valuable to the point where, it makes me want to, put something into it, whenever I'm listening to the music. And the music always makes me feel really, really good. So every time I've listened, to some kind of improvisatory music, it would always be something that, I feel like I want to do. It was always that for me from a very early age. And so I can't quite put into words why I like it so much, but because, like I said, it's such an abstract thing, and it's something that's just such a lived-in part of my life experience, to the point where it's hard to kind of say it in words. But I will say that, just seeing how much art these musicians put into their craft and everything, I can definitely appreciate that, because I was always interested in creating things also, and to, see people who are doing that day in and day out, all their whole life. It's just something to see, it's something to, really think about, when one is listening to the work,
Right on. So My final question for you is this. Everyone has their version or perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you run your life, you know yourself best. Who do you think you are?
Well, I think I am. I just am. You know what I mean? I can't, I don't like to really define myself too much. I guess I could say that I'm a person who is in this for life, and who is in this music, for life, and has always been committed to producing work that I feel speaks to me, and that I feel hopefully can speak to some other people and everything. And if I'm not here to inflict it on those who don't want to appreciate it. What I do is designed for people who really appreciate art, and who can really take it all in, and who could maybe hopefully get something out of it, to, get some kind of fulfillment out of it, for themselves, and that kind of thing. And, I'm trying to make music that expands one's consciousness, because that's the music that I grew up listening to, music that kind of, hopefully expanded my consciousness and got me to some areas of learning that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise, were it left to my own resources. So I think I'm a person who is definitely more about that than anything else. And that's why I say I am, because that's how it's always been for me, just in terms of my growing up and everything. And so, yeah, I think that's what I have to say about that.
Right on, man. Hey, thank you for taking the time out today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Newark, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Tyshawn for his time, honesty, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.